Hello everyone, welcome back to Helldivers 2. This is part 4 of my Warbond ranking series, and it's been a while since the last video. The end of the school year kept me ridiculously busy, and along the way, I found myself a traveler on Root Earth and Remnant 2 going crazy with build crafting. At the time of the previous video in the series, we had 11 Warbonds total. Now, we have 3 more to add to the mix. Borderline Justice, Masters of Ceremony, and the most recent, Force of Law. Before we get into it, let's recap how the Warbonds are being ranked. We're looking at the 4 best items from each Warbond and its booster. Armor passive is being used as a substitute for any Warbonds that don't meet the criteria. They either don't have a total of 4 items for us to look at, or the armor passive simply outscores the booster. From there, the points are tallied and the Warbond ranking created. Also, please keep in mind that these scores are based largely on my playstyle and experiences, what I see other players using, feedback from those I regularly play with, and talking shop with randoms. The rankings as they appeared at the end of part 3 are as shown here. Since those rankings were created, we've had some buffs and some nerfs. Hang out to the end of this video and I'll address some of those and make adjustments to the rankings as necessary. As with my previous videos in this series, you should find Azure 4's takes on these Warbonds pinned in the comments below at some point in the near future. With that, let's take a look at Borderline Justice. Aesthetically, this Warbond looks great. Admittedly, all 3 of the Warbonds we're going to talk about this time around look great. But for Borderline Justice, if you're a fan of the Western theme, this Warbond is right up your alley. That said, please keep in mind that aesthetics don't factor into this ranking system in any way. So, let's take a look at the Deadeye Marksman Rifle. Personally, I was really looking forward to this one, but I was hoping it would be a proper sniper rifle. Instead, we got another MR, which is my least favorite primary weapon category. That said, the Deadeye did end up being my favorite of the group. It's medium pen, it has better damage than the counter sniper, and a slower rate of fire, making it feel like the shots actually have some heft to them. But I think I'm in the minority here, as I don't see the Deadeye come out very often. It seems like most players really prefer the counter sniper. For that reason, the Deadeye is getting a 5. Next up, the Talon Sidearm. Now, this thing packs some good punch, and if you're planning to run a sidearm-centric build, I could see this doing really well. That said, sidearm builds don't really compare to the more traditional primary weapon setups, and in general play, the Senator seems to be the far more popular option with its heavy penetration, versus the Talon's medium AP. With that in mind, the Talon's going to come in at a 7. Dynamite replaced traditional grenades for a lot of players when this Warbond initially dropped. But once the novelty of the variable timer wore off, players started griping about its less than desirable destructive capacity, and it disappeared pretty quickly. That's not to say it's bad, you can absolutely have some fun with this and get the job done, but there are definitely better options to choose from. The Dynamite gets a 5. Next up, the Hover Pack. Bottom line, it's sick. If you've watched some of my other videos, you know I love the Jump Pack. It's a game changer, but I'm well aware that it's not for everybody. The Hover Pack's going to be in the same category. Being able to float above enemies and rain fire down upon them, reach elevated positions for overwatch or sniping is awesome. As far as which is better, it's a 6 of one, half a dozen of the other situation. You've got to consider player preference, enemy type, what weapons or loadouts you're running, but whatever the case, the Hover Pack is bomb. It's a solid 8. Last up, we're looking at the Gunslinger Armor passive, as it scores slightly better than the lackluster booster, Sample Extractor. If you're someone who wants to go all in on sidearms, then this is the booster for you. 40% faster reload on your secondary weapons, a quicker draw time, less recoil. It's kinda siege ready and kinda not, and not a ton of players are really focused on secondary weapon builds. This booster isn't useless, but it's not particularly key either. So there's really no big rush to get to this one. Gunslinger gets a 5. This puts the Borderline Justice Warbond at a total of 30 points, taking second seat in a tie with Urban Legends. Next up, a Warbond made almost exclusively for cosplaying divers, the Masters of Ceremony. Let's state this right out the gate. These are some of the best looking armors in the game. Everything here looks fucking solid. If your goal is to act out a military procession or a battle scenario complete with lockstep marching, a bannerman, and planting your flag for a rallying point, then this is the Warbond for you. That said, its actual functionality in terms of normal play is subpar. Let's start with the Amendment Marksman Rifle. Still not a proper sniper rifle, but hey, they put a bayonet on this one. A burst fire MR that's better than the Diligence and worse than the Counter Sniper. And if you know how I feel about the Diligence wins, then you know this isn't really going anywhere good. The Amendment fills a role that no one was asking for. At best, it's a 4, and that's being really generous. Next in line, the Saber. If you're looking to put the melee bump from Peak Physique or Reinforced Epaulets to work, then you might find a use for this. That said, these haven't really changed the essential dynamic of the game, destroying enemies with stratagems, which has always been Arrowhead's focus. If you're running melee, you're doing it for kicks, and as I've said many times before, you're probably getting wrecked not long after. Also keep in mind that with this, we've got 3 slashing melee weapons to choose from: the Saber, the Hatchet, and the Shovel. All 3 are light armor penetration, and all 3 do roughly the same damage. Now, I say roughly because they're supposed to do the same damage, but in all our tests, they never equaled out. The Saber always came out worse than the other 2. This means that the Saber is worse than the Hatchet, which is purchased directly from the store and doesn't require you to buy the whole Warbond, and it's also worse than the Entrenchment Tool, which is a free map-generated item. Now, the Shovel does take the place of your support weapon if you happen to find it and pick it up, so we're really just comparing the Saber to the Hatchet. And in that, the Hatchet comes out on top. When you compare it to the other options, the Saber's really only here for dress up. True, an argument can be made for more melee, like more melee is good melee, but nobody is lobbying for alternatives that are weaker than what we already have. The Saber is a 3. Still on the melee kick, we've got the One True Flag support weapon stratagem. Everything you need to know about this weapon can be found in that first sentence. It's a melee weapon, a single target weapon that would be replacing an orbital or an eagle barrage or a sentry or a real support weapon. It's got some great melee range and it's got medium armor penetration, but it's got 0 practical uses. For the average player, this thing is never going to see the light of day outside of the cosplay uses this Warbond was designed for, as it in no way makes up for what you're sacrificing in order to take it into battle. And for players hard up for melee builds, this won't really see any use anyway. If you're running a spear, you're running the Stun Lance, which doesn't cost a stratagem slot and has almost the same reach. And in our tests, it hit with better damage than the flag, and that's not even counting the fact that it stuns. Arrowhead really should have just gone all in on this one and given us a reason to use it. Waving the flag should grant players within a certain range a decreased loss in stamina while running and give 5% damage reduction just to help them reach the rally point. Planting the flag should grant all Helldivers within a slightly smaller radius, plus 10 to ergonomics and 10% faster reload to help them hold the area. Neither one of these things is going to break the game by any means, but at least it would give players a reason to use this otherwise pointless weapon. Barring that, the One True Flag is, as its name implies, a 1. Now let's take a look at the Pyrotech Grenade. Does it look like a firework? Yep. Does it fly off to wherever it pleases if someone so much as sneezes within 50 meters of its activation? Also yes. But here's the catch. It kills shit. And for a while, it killed some pretty big shit too. Now, that's been patched out for the most part, but that doesn't change the fact that this thing can do some serious damage when it's used properly. For me, I wouldn't say that I'd pick it over some of the more traditional options, but that doesn't change the fact that the Pyrotech can still be put to some damn good use. It's a 7. For the booster, we've got the Sample Scanner. Another farming-centric booster, but this one performs a little bit different than the one we didn't include in the last Warbond. Don't let this name mislead you. It's got nothing to do with scanning anything, and it won't make it easier for you to find samples, per se. What it does is give you the chance to pick up multiple samples each time you pick up a sample from the ground. This can add up pretty quickly, and as far as I know, it doesn't have a cap like the sample extractor does. For obvious reasons, newer players will get more out of this than vets, That said, for vets who are regularly donating to the DSS, I can see this actually paying dividends if you happen to need to replenish your sample stocks quickly. The sample scanner is going to get a 5, based solely on its farming utility. New players can benefit from it, vets can theoretically find a use for it, and the next time Arrowhead releases a set of ship upgrades, I think we're all going to be dusting this one off. This puts the Masters of Ceremony at 20 points, which is honestly better than I thought it would score. Now for our most recent addition, the Force of Law Warbond. Another solid looking set of equipment here, even more so if you're a Judge Dredd fan. First up, the Pacifier. This AR was surprisingly sweet. While, like most ARs, its DPS is a little lacking, it boasts medium armor pen and can quickly stun lock enemies. I found myself being pretty miffed when I had to put this gun away to continue leveling up other weapons. As far as ARs go, we've got the Adjudicator or the Double-Edged Sickle as top dogs. The former just being a solid choice outright, and the latter being amazing with the right gear and booster. The Pacifier isn't going to match the damage of either of those options, but its armor pen and stun lock make it a tempting alternative, and deservedly so. It gets an 8. Next up, the sickest looking weapon we've gotten in a good while, the De-Escalator. A 6-shot arc grenade launcher with a quick rate of fire that can be set to full or semi-automatic. The De-Escalator easily handles hordes and behemoths alike. A lot of players critique its lack of damage, yet it rips through enemies with ease. Its minor downside is going to be its reload. A full reload is very slow, but once you get used to reloading after every shot, that doesn't seem to matter as much. The biggest downside is the fact that the De-Escalator has no destructive capacity for structures or objectives. You'll need to make sure you've got actual grenades in some form to deal with egg nests, bug holes, bot factories, and the like, because the De-Escalator only cares about enemies. Even still, this thing's a beast. The De-Escalator gets an 8, and if it ever gets even minimal destructive capacity, it'd be a 10. From there, we're moving to the Guard Dog K9, a rover drone boasting an arc thrower. This baby actually fires much faster than I was expecting it to, and it's got some pretty solid range as well. If you're running from enemies you don't have time to deal with, it's going to be knocking them out in droves along the way. Arc-resistant armor is going to be a must here. Even if you're running solo or avoiding your squad, the right angle can still murk you as easily as it can anybody else if you don't have arc resistance. And if the whole squad is wearing it, this Warbond has made an arc team a freaking monster. Bottom line, the K9 is awesome, and it's easily better than the Dog Breath Rover. But since that requires specific armor on the part of the player and or the squad, the K9 is going to get a 7 due to its tendency to TK players and the squad alike. Now onto the grenade, the Urchin. I'll be honest, I was expecting this to be really meh. It's technically got an AoE stun, but it's so much smaller than the normal stun grenade that it's essentially a single target stun grenade. So it seems like it should be a no-go. But when you consider the fact that it's sticky, has a longer stun duration, and works on all but the biggest enemies you're going to come across, you might do a double take. The Urchin gets a 6. It's pretty good, but it's even more situational than the stun grenades. The booster here is Stunning Hellpods, which is arguably only slightly less shit than Firebomb Hellpods. So we're going to focus on the armor passive here. If you're a defensive player, you'll be hard-pressed to find a better armor passive than Ballistic Padding. 25% resistance to all chest damage, immunity to chest hemorrhage, and 25% resistance to explosion. Ballistic Padding gets a 7, putting Force of Law at a total of 36 points. So let's take a look at the standings thus far, before we start talking about recent buffs and nerfs. We've got Democratic Detonation at 43 points. At 42 points, we've got Helldivers Mobilize in its honorary position. 36 points, we've got Force of Law. 33 points, Steeled Veterans. At 32 points, we've got Servants of Freedom. At 31 points, we've got a 3-way tie between Chemical Agents, Polar Patriots, and Cutting Edge. At 30 points, we've got another tie between Urban Legends and Borderline Justice. At 26 points, we've got Freedom Flame. Viper Commandos comes in at 21 points. Masters of Ceremony at 20. And finally, Truth Enforcers with 18 points. Now, to quote Dumbledore before awarding the House Cup, recent events must be taken into account. Let's talk about some recent balance changes. Items 1 and 2 both come from the Servants of Freedom. First up, the Ultimatum. Arrowhead recently downgraded its destructive capacity against structures. It still wrecks pretty much any enemy you hit with it, and it now works with Hellpod space optimization, but a big part of its previous rating of 10 was its ability to destroy basically whatever you shot it at, like an automaton jammer or detection tower. That utility is now gone, and for good reason. I mean, it was essentially a cheat code. In its current state, the Ultimatum warrants an 8, temporarily putting Servants of Freedom at 30 points. But now we have to look at the armor passive, Integrated Explosives. Previously pretty shit, scoring a whopping 2 points. This passive now includes increased grenade count. Now, that's not game-breaking by any means, but it's also worth noting. And it's worth 2 more points, which puts Integrated Explosives at 4 points and keeps Servants of Freedom at a total of 32. The next item is also an armor passive. Unflinching from the Truth Enforcers used to just help divers resist flinching, which didn't really do anything at all. But Arrowhead recently gave this passive some much needed love. It now boasts plus 25 armor, which if you're running light armor is a 50% increase, and also packs the Scout Armor's radar ping to track enemies on the map. That's a pretty substantial upgrade. Unflinching was previously a 2, it's now a 5, and this puts Truth Enforcers at 21 points to tie with Viper Commandos. Lastly, we're going to look at the Electrical Conduit armor passive from Cutting Edge. This one isn't a buff or a nerf, but an adjustment on the basis of utility with all the arc-related goodies we got from the Force of Law Warbond. A 95% reduction to arc damage is nothing to sneeze at, but it didn't have as much versatility or use previously. Arc damage from enemies was few and far between, and arc damage from players was pretty easy to avoid if it was there at all. There simply weren't enough build options or enough enticement options to choose this for anything outside of a niche use. Consequently, Electrical Conduit previously scored a 3. But with the K9 and the De-Escalator added to the arsenal, an arc build is now top dog as far as elemental setups go. With that in mind, Electrical Conduit now beats Advanced Filtration and Inflammable. It's jumping from a 3 to a 7. This gives Cutting Edge a total of 35 points, putting it just below Force of Law, which is fitting given you want to get them one after the other to get the most out of both of them. And now we remove Helldivers Mobilize with its honorary score, and there we have it, folks. The bracket is now complete. For you new players, I hope this helps you get an idea of where you want to spend your hard-won super credits. For you vets, what do you think? What did you agree with? What would you change? Put it in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching.